Slater Crusaders, America's the greatest country in the world. How are you? Welcome to the show. Glad you're here. I want to go right to our guest to talk about the debate that was last night. Will Ricciardella from the Washington Examiner. Will, how are you, brother?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on, Mike.
Good, man. My pleasure. Listen, I want to be honest. I'm supposed to be the expert. I'm the host of the show. Whatever, right? I have a 4-day-old. I didn't watch the debate last night. And I probably shouldn't admit that, but I'm glad you're here because you suffered through it. Give me a couple of the highlights here. What's the big takeaway first?
Well, this was the first one that really turned into a food fight. I mean, you had the last one where Warren, went after Bloomberg a bit with the comments he made in the past. She did relatively the same thing here, but she didn't miss much other than the CBS moderators let it kind of get out of control. Biden stayed within the limits. The other people kind of went after each other, particularly Buttigieg after Sanders. Sanders really emerged in this debate as the clear front runner. Everybody else is kind of vying for a position after him. Biden was concerned about winning the black vote in South Carolina. Him and Steyer were kind of duking it out for that. I mean, that's really Biden's last best hope of winning South Carolina. Sanders is surging there. I think he's about the last poll. He's 4 points behind. This is Biden's last hurrah. He's got to win South Carolina.
So we'll put this aside just to get this out of the way, but I did hear a lot about the moderators being just like ridiculous and the whole thing was a huge mess. Was that your takeaway?
Yeah, and look, it's not easy for moderators when they did try to control it. They interrupted questions, which got pretty annoying. I wanted to hear some of the answers. They did let it get away. They didn't do the best job, but they don't have the easiest job either. They have to make good TV at the same time. I mean, people tend to forget that, so when they are throwing food at each other, that makes for good television. But at the same time, people want answers. The only person giving substantive answers was Klobuchar last night. So she really changed tacks from the last debate where she was more fiery. Now she wanted to seem like the more reasonable candidate on stage. I think that might actually help her.
Oh, interesting. Okay, that's a good question. So who there, other than Klobuchar, had a change of strategy, like a noticeable change of strategy?
Gosh, that's a good question. Warren really kind of changed her strategy around. It's almost as if she's like Bernie Sanders' protector at this point, as if she's vying for a vice president spot. Yeah, I mean, she changed from, she shifted from attacking him on women to kind of protecting him now, kind of vying. It seems like she's moving in for a VP spot since she's slid so far in the polls.
Interesting. Do you remember any particular example yesterday of her protecting him?
She's kind of like, as a PR person running flack, it's kind of like, how would you describe, it's trying to explain the plans for him or explain away, this Medicare for, I mean, these are $60 trillion boondoggles. And, some of her proposals are relatively similar. So she was kind of discussing them in similar terms and kind of giving him, giving Bernie an out.
Yeah, interesting. Do you think she would he pick her for VP, and would that be a good choice? I haven't even, that's weird. I haven't even gone down that road yet of VP choices.
I don't think it would be a good choice. Why would you pick another? She's essentially a socialist candidate too, although she'll deny it, but she is. I think he would want to pick somebody probably, a little bit more moderate. He'd probably want a minority candidate since he struggles. You see this in South Carolina. Perhaps that's who he'd pick. Probably Stacey Abrams is somebody he'd probably consider.
Oh, whoa. Okay, wow, my head's exploded. That's too far ahead. Whoa, good night. Okay, let's go down the line. So how did Klobuchar do overall? You mentioned a little change of strategy for her. Did she come across as a reasonable person, or is she still just on the trash heap?
She came across as the only reasonable person on stage. She wanted to discuss the issues. I think that does well with, these middle-of-the-road voters who don't like Trump, but don't also like Bernie Sanders. I think that helps her an awful lot. I mean, look, this is about consolidating now. Everyone's kind of out to get Bernie Sanders. Who's going to be the next candidate in the line? If Bernie Sanders loses South Carolina, it could be Klobuchar, it could be Pete Buttigieg. I mean, that's kind of what they're vying for. So a lot of these people like Steyer, Bloomberg, need to kind of fall out of the field. Bloomberg came, he was a bit more prepared, but he didn't have a night that was, good enough to kind of change his position.
Yeah, so Bloomberg, I'm a big proponent or whatever. I really truly believe that expectations change everything for in our life all the time, right? Quick example, my wife gave birth to her third kid. So everyone's told her, oh, third kid, easy, easy, easy. The kid will slide right out, blah, blah, blah. So the expectation was this will be nothing. And then it was more than nothing, right? So it was anyway, so I'm a big believer in expectations. So the first debate, I went in with Bloomberg having the lowest of expectations. This guy's just a wet rag. He has no charisma. He's absolutely terrible. And then he did okay. He had a couple little jabs and I was like, wow, he did great. But I think a lot of people went in Bloomberg in the first debate oh, mayor of New York City, he's the man, new frontrunner, blah, blah, blah. And then he didn't meet that expectation, so he totally bombed. So it's all about expectations. So that being said, where were Bloomberg's expectations, and for you, and for most people, do you think, and did he meet them?
No, I think he had to have a much better performance to kind of have his name being talked about as the runner-up to, to Bernie Sanders. I think Biden did well enough to kind of maintain that. Polling in South Carolina kind of suggests that. And look, this is the last debate before Super Tuesday. So having momentum is pretty important here. Look, if Bernie Sanders wins South Carolina, I don't know where that momentum can take him. If Joe Biden wins in South Carolina, that could hurt him a little bit, help Joe Biden. That by sure doesn't mean that Joe Biden's going to win the nomination or anything, and Bernie won't. Bernie's clearly the front runner. But Bloomberg had to do more to kind of put his name in that same position. He came a little bit more prepared than last time. He did really poorly last time, and I think that hurt him more than however he could perform this time.
Yeah. What
He had
is
a lot of
everyone
ground to
else's...
make up.
Totally. What's everyone else's polling looking like on the Super Tuesday states in general?
Well, you have Biden, who's the last poll was, this is all before the debate. The last poll, Biden was up by 4 points on Bernie Sanders, and you have Buttigieg, who was, in the teens, and you have Liz Warren, who's starting to fall down into the single digits. So, look, this is still Biden's race to lose. I'm pretty shocked that Sanders is only 4 points behind. But look, there's a huge enthusiasm gap. You have the far left of the party wants Bernie Sanders. The middle of the road folks who are kind of non-ideological aren't really that amped up about anybody. There's nobody that they can really get behind. We've seen similar things in 2012 with the Republicans. I mean, 1 minute they were behind Herman Cain, 1 minute they were behind Ben Carson, 1 minute they were behind Newt Gingrich. Well, so it's shifting around. There's no one that they can feel they can get behind. And Bernie Sanders is a huge kind of movement off track. So it's not, they're going to have a lot of work to do in order to kind of win that middle ground, the people who, they can switch from Trump.
Yeah, so it's interesting. My perception has been manipulated by media coverage lately. So I would have said that Bernie's, even in polling, which, take polling for whatever you want, but I would have said that he's the front runner. I would have predicted that he's the front runner in the Super Tuesday states, but you're still saying Biden is actually in the lead.
Biden's in the lead in South Carolina. Sanders is clearly the front runner. Now, I'm saying that if Biden does win South Carolina, it does give him some momentum. Biden is seen as a somewhat moderate candidate in the party. Perhaps if people in other states see that Biden can actually win something at a national level, perhaps they'll consider voting for him. There's that enthusiasm gap. He needs people to understand that he can win something, have some enthusiasm behind him. The enthusiasm gap, I believe, is about 11 points between Biden and Sanders in Sanders' favor. And look, this is a midterm election too, so these are already very difficult. So I think if you have a higher turnout, it might actually help Biden, particularly in South Carolina. There's a small contingency of Sanders acolytes who show up to these things and vote for Sanders. I think there's also, in some open primary states, Republicans who are going to go in and vote for Bernie Sanders because that's who they like to see Donald Trump run against. I think there's some organization moving towards that.
Oh, geez. Biden, correct me if I'm wrong, Biden's never won a primary, ever. His whole life. National elections,
he's done pretty poorly. And at the outset of this whole entire thing, when he announced, I said, look, what has Biden ever really won at a national level? He's failed. So, that says something about a candidate.
1% Joe, as the president calls it. And that's why I mentioned trash heap earlier. Trump said some line about Obama took Biden off the trash heap. Is there any path for Buttigieg? Or was he just purely a flavor of the month? He's just hanging in there hoping for something?
I was just going to say that. I was just going to say Buttigieg. Look, back months ago, probably in November, I predicted Buttigieg had a really good shot at actually coming in first in Iowa, and he nearly did. The Buttigieg has to kind of take that middle ground. He's really not well known. He's starting to become better known now. But he can kind of shift back to the middle ground, win the Biden voters, win the Klobuchar voters, win the Bloomberg voters. But he needs to do a better job, particularly on the debate stage. He kind of disappeared a little bit last night, went after Bernie Sanders. Sometimes he swings very far left, sometimes he swings towards the middle. It's really hard to get a gauge on where he stands right now, so the voters don't really know who he is. So he really kind of has to step up his game in South Carolina, but he's going to have a problem among the more conservative religious voters there.
Yeah, and it's so interesting. So how much, two questions. Start with this. How much do you think these debates really matter? I keep going back and forth between they don't matter at all and they really matter a lot, right? I don't know what it is. So do they matter and who do they matter to?
Perhaps in South Carolina, it might sway some people. There are a lot of people who are undecided at the last minute that it might change. So sometimes they matter. Have the policies really changed much? No. What's changed is how they're kind of, attacking one another now, and how these are turning into food fights, and it's turning into more of a personality contest rather than anything that's going to change on policy. So that's really kind of all that matters to. No one's going to remember these in November. Some of the, Trump might use some of the quips and ads and so on, but I mean, they're not going to be really, it's not that much of a big deal coming up towards Super Tuesday. It's a big deal in South Carolina to determine who has momentum going into Super Tuesday. But that's really all that matters. People don't understand that there's not a lot of ideological people in the country who watch these things all the time. Sometimes they pick in the last minute.
Yeah. That was going to be my next question is who watches this? So I'm in San Diego, so I'm the West Coast, and I go to bed pretty early, but even for me, these things end pretty late. So did it start at 9 o'clock Eastern? Is that right?
Yes. So not many
that's
people
crazy.
watch them. Yeah, not many people. Look, these are people who have a dog in the fight are watching it. People who are behind Warren, people who are behind Sanders. They want to see their candidates perform well. It's kind of like a sporting event for them. But look, what is this? How many debates have we had already here? They started in July. So there's not much really changing. I mean, people are kind of tuning out and they get their news once in a while, but they're not paying attention to this all day, every day. I think that's why momentum matters. If they see Biden wins in South Carolina, they may not have seen the debate, but they'll be, hey, Joe Biden just won a state. Maybe I want to vote for him in my state now. Maybe he's the guy I want to pick. So that's why momentum matters. And that's why this debate matters for South Carolina, because it could sway some last minute voters.
Yeah, that's so shallow. That's such a shallow testament to people that that's a deciding factor. That's lame. You're not voting for the guy you want, but it's
people are busy.
Yeah.
They're working. They have kids. They're trying to, some people are struggling to put food on the table. Some people just got a new job. Look, they can't watch this stuff all the time. And a lot of it is just reruns of the thing they saw the last time. And again, most of America they're not ideologues like, people in D.C. are. As you know, but this is all people in D.C. talk about, New York, LA proper and so on, but not in, certain areas like San Diego or in the Rust Belt. They don't talk about this all day. They don't obsess over it like, inside the Beltway folks do, intellectuals and academics and so on do.
Yeah. Last question for you. Do you see any path for Bloomberg?
I do. He has so much money that he's a threat. Now, is the probability low? Yes, very low. He hasn't won a primary. He's not even on the ballot in some states. But I mean, he could be a disruptor. He's already probably hurting Biden at this point. He's hurting Buttigieg. He's taking some of these middle voters and he's making the path a little bit easier for Sanders. So, I mean, now you see more, this is why you see more of a food fight for those fighting for the second place, the center of the Democratic Party right now.
I want to know what you think about this, Will, and then we'll let you go. So we've shared so many stories about Bloomberg buying endorsements and buying silence during his time as mayor. And this has been a well-known thing. It's no conspiracy here. This is what he does. So my prediction is if Bernie doesn't get a majority of the delegates on the first round of voting, that Bloomberg gives $1 million anonymously to the charity of your choice to all the superdelegates, and he just straight up buys the votes. He buys a majority of the superdelegates.
I mean, I think that's far-fetched. Now, I've seen a lot of far-fetched things happen, but look, if this stuff is out in the open, let's say that he does give to a charity. I mean, it has to be disclosed and so on. If this is out in the open and that's what the delegates do, well, then the party has a lot of work to do to fix how they pick, how they picked, candidates and so on. Look, if this stuff is out in the open, I don't care how much money he spends on ads. Everyone likes to say buys an election. Well, no one's buying my vote. No one's buying Joe Spit the Ragman's vote in Wisconsin. Okay, they go in and they vote on their own volition. I don't care how many ads he bought, whatever he put money into or charity. At the end of the day, it comes down to the individual voter and what information they have, okay? So I don't like typically when people say buy this, buy that. You're not buying Americans, you're not buying their mind, you're not taking away their individual will. But would a scenario like that be good? Absolutely not. Would it be good for the Democratic Party? No, not after the fiasco of 2016, where you found out everything was kind of rigged against Bernie. So no, it wouldn't look good for the Democratic Party, and they'd have a lot of changing to do.
Will Ricciardella. Will, awesome to talk to you, brother. Washington Examiner, where can people learn more about you?
Thank you so much.
Where can people learn more about you? You got a Twitter or something?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I'm at Will Ricci on Twitter. At WILLRICCI.
Beautiful. Thanks, Will. Appreciate you, man. We'll talk again.
Thank you. Thank you.
Coming up next, want to talk about Bernie support, where it comes from, what is it, who are these Bernie supporters? We'll do that next. True story. Mike Slater. Spread the word. Hey, Slater Crusaders, I want to play this clip of Bernie here. He can't stop talking about Cuba and their literacy programs here.
But on this issue of the potential political peril you and Democrats could suffer in Florida, Congresswoman Donna Shalala said, come on down to Miami and meet with the people who have been affected by his regime. Would you be willing to do that and hear them out?
I go all over the country, of course. Cuba is a dictatorship. I've said that 8 million times. But that does not mean to say, as Obama pointed out, that even under a dictatorship, you could teach people to read and to write, that you could provide health care to all people.
Good night, man. So we did a whole thing on this yesterday. We're not going to do it again. But we also teach kids to read and write in America. That's not a bonus thing that they do that we don't. I'm not going to do it all again. Great article read today in the Miami Herald, and we knew a ton of these would come out. But Miami Herald by Fabiola Santiago. She was 8. She was in the 3rd grade when her mom, who was a teacher, was forced to resign because the teacher, mom, refused to teach communist dogma to her students. And she wrote an article about being in a communist literacy program. And she said when she was, she's writing about herself. She's writing about she herself as 8. When she's asked to write a glowing essay on Fidel Castro, she writes the biography, complete, thorough, but no glowing appraisal, because at 10, she knows more than Bernie Sanders at 78. And she goes on and talks how terrible communism is, even though they had a literacy program. And she makes the big argument that literacy predates Castro. She calls it it's a common and often repeated lie that everyone was backwards and an idiot before Castro came in and it magically made everyone brilliant. Her mom worked in a literacy program in the countryside after graduating from Teachers College in the early 50s. You had to do that in order to then go teach in a classroom. All right, so there was literacy even before Castro, and there's literacy here. This is the dumbest conversation ever. So why would you, here's the big question, here's why it's relevant. Why would you believe the communist government's lies that a country has a literacy program because of Fidel Castro? Why would anyone today believe that? You would only believe it if you think that all good things have to come from government. If you are a socialist, all good things have to come from government, always. There's no other explanation for anything good that ever happens. And on the flip side, if anything bad ever happens, it's because there wasn't enough government. We see this all the time. Anytime there's something good, it's because of government. You didn't build that. Anytime there's something bad, it's because we didn't have a law. We didn't have enough government to stop it. That's the progressive mindset. So that's why this matters. Because the fact that Bernie would and continues to pray, again, it's one thing if here's a video from the 80s, Bernie, and he's like, it was a long time ago. But this is like last weekend until last night. He's doing the same things today. He won't stop it. It's because all good things, in his perspective, all good things come from government. And that's obviously super relevant to today. But listen, really in the end, none of this matters. I read an article all worked up because Bernie can't say how much any of his programs cost or how he'll pay for them. And they're like, it's unbelievable. Can you believe that? Blah, blah, blah. I'll tell you, no Bernie supporter cares. No Bernie supporter cares how much anything costs because it's not about that. This tweet right here, we showed it yesterday, we're going to show it again. This tweet here is, this has completely changed my thinking of this entire primary moving forward here. This changes everything. It's from Matt Walsh. He said, Bernie's arguments are moral, not economic. That's why he has so much support. He's speaking to the moral outrage people feel, much of it justified. The right has to respond on moral grounds. Talking about the economic infeasibility of his proposals will not be effective. That's exactly right. And I wonder if the DNC will get it, right? Forget about conservatives or Republicans getting it. I don't even know if the DNC will ever get it. And if they do, it might be too late. You know, you hear some people saying, I've seen this lately, that they're like, hey, Bernie could win. Anything's possible. No one thought Trump could win in 2016. He did, so Bernie could win too. That parallel to me is not exactly true. Bernie and Trump are very different. They're very different brands, right? They had totally different name awareness, personas. Bernie, for instance, didn't have a TV show for 15 seasons where he was the man in charge, making decisions, telling people you're fired. Bernie's not the same campaigner as Trump. Like, they're very different. But the movements behind them really are the exact same. John Davidson wrote a great article about this. He went to a rally in Texas, and it was in Austin, so Texas. But the audience, the crowd, like, they're free, they're cheering. They don't care about the economics of Bernie's argument. Here's the key word. There is a discontentment among Bernie's supporters. A discontentment. And it's a discontentment that Joe Biden could never tap into because he's part of that problem. He's what people are discontent at. Quick reminder here. Let's go back. So Trump's first question that at any debate, this is the very first question of any debate during the Republican primary. It was at Fox debate. Here's the question.
Is there anyone on stage, and can I see hands, who is unwilling tonight to pledge your support to the eventual nominee of the Republican Party and pledge to not run an independent campaign against that person? Again, we're looking for you to raise your hand now. Raise your hand now if you won't make that pledge tonight. Mr. Trump. So, Mr. Trump, to be clear, you're standing on a Republican primary debate.
I fully understand.
The place where the RNC will give the nominee the nod.
I fully understand.
So good. All right. Think about what that moment was. Every other candidate said, oh, yes, I support the party. Oh, the party. I'll do whatever the party said. And Trump says, no, he's the only one who said, no, I won't. Because he wasn't there to support the party. That's the party that has betrayed Republicans for decades. That was his campaign. He's not gonna praise the party that's betrayed the Republicans for so long. Right? So he knew what he was tapping into. He was tapping into people who were discontent with the party. And even in that moment right there, he's not going to sell out all those people and be like, hey, everyone who's discontent with the party, no matter what happens, I'm still going to go with the party. No, the party's nothing. He saw that oil well of discontentment and he tapped right into it right from the beginning. Bernie has that same oil well of discontentment. Now, he undermines it every once in a while when he plays nice with the party that his supporters feel betrayed by. Betrayal is one of the worst things. Betrayal's as bad as it gets. It's in Dante's Inferno, it's the deepest layer of hell. You got to go all the way down to the bottom before you get to betrayal. This is where Cain, who killed his brother, this is where Judas are for eternity. Treachery, betrayal. Betrayal in the best movie ever, Braveheart, right? The most powerful moment of the entire movie is when he was betrayed by Robert the Bruce. Now, because of copyright laws, blah, 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 we can't play the whole scene. But this is the part where they're fighting at the end, and they both fall off their horse, and Mel Gibson's Braveheart is about to cut off Robert the Bruce's head. And here's where and then I think he pulls off his mask, and this is where he figures out that it's actually his friend, Robert the Bruce. That's the look of a man who is betrayed. I know someone who was deeply betrayed by a family member, and there's nothing worse. Republicans have felt betrayed by the people that we have voted for decades. Republicans who never got anything done with immigration, who never got any real tax cuts, who just kept spending out of control, on and on. John Boehner was our fearless leader. Like, he's the guy that we put, and then the party puts up John McCain and Mitt Romney. Like, what are we even doing here? So conservatives felt betrayed, and here was someone who tapped into that anger and wasn't running for the party, but was running for the people. See the difference? And that was Donald Trump. Bernie supporters are the same thing. They also feel betrayed. But here's the thing. Here's the most important part. Bernie voters, they're not angry at Trump. I mean, they are just like you would be if he was a political opponent, right? Like a normal amount. And they really can't be that angry at Trump because Trump has not lived up to their terrible expectations of like mass genocide that everyone was worried about after Election Day. But Bernie's rise is not motivated by hatred of Trump. It's motivated by betrayal of the Democratic Party. And that came from Barack Obama. And again, I'm not going to mention Joe Biden again, but that's why Joe Biden is never going to go anywhere because he thought he could latch on to Barack Obama and take him right to the nomination, but he latched himself onto a broken train, a damaged brand. That was a total miscalculation. Barack Obama, we'll talk about it in a second, but Barack Obama he's not as revered and esteemed by the American people as the media makes it out to be, because he's one of the reasons for the betrayal. So this was John Davidson's point when he wrote this article in The Federalist. I think he's spot on. The betrayal comes from a failure of Obamacare to really do anything to fix healthcare costs. It was the failure of Obama to hold Wall Street accountable for the housing crash and the recession, as Democrats see it. It's a betrayal with a slow economic recovery, even after, what was it called? Like the stimulus and all that stuff. It was endless wars that Obama never stopped. Huge promises of hope and change, and nothing really came from it if you're a Democrat. And I truly believe that the Obama brand has been artificially propped up by the media, but I don't think it's a brand that's well liked anymore by Democrats. And again, Biden tried to hook himself to it, but miscalculation there. So after 8 years of disappointment of Obama, the DNC, the Democratic Party, put up Hillary Clinton. Right? She's the embodiment of the establishment. So where there was betrayal and lack of trust in institutions for Republicans that helped Donald Trump, there is today a betrayal and lack of trust in institutions for Democrats that are helping Bernie. And he is sitting on that same giant oil well of discontentment that Trump was. And I don't think Bernie's even fully tapped into it yet. My point of bringing all this up is watch out for the economic argument. No one who feels betrayed cares that Obamacare, that Medicare for all is going to cost $60 trillion. And no one who feels betrayed by the Democratic Party cares that there was a literacy program that predates Castro. No one cares. No one who feels betrayed by the Democratic Party cares that their guy now is praising communist dictator. I mean, that's how deep betrayal is. That's how crazy it makes you. And Bernie uses hyperbole, right? He talks about starvation wages, right? That's one of his starvation wages. He did that in Austin, and the people of Austin, Texas cheered when the unemployment rate's 2.5%, and the average hourly wage is $2.50 more than the rest of the country. And they're like, yeah, things are terrible. Like, no, not really. The job numbers are great. And Trump keeps touting it, which is good, but it's not enough because it's not about the economy, not by people who feel betrayed. So we could talk about infant mortality rates like we did yesterday. We could talk about literacy rates. We could talk about how these things have nothing to do with communism. Like, we have the highest literacy rate possible without the, murdering political prisoners. This is John Davidson. He said this was more or less Trump's message in 2016 and his explicit messages in his inauguration speech. Only the villains have changed slightly, in Sanders' telling. Instead of corrupt Washington politicians, it's corrupt Wall Street billionaires. Instead of Obama's failure to drain the DC swamp, it's Obama's failure to take on corporate special interests and drug companies. In both cases, the message is clear. The people have been cheated by the elites, and we're going to bring them down. Our time is now. That's what it was for the Trump supporters in 2016. That's what it is for Bernie supporters today. I think that's 100% spot on. I say all this because right now I still think it looks really good for Trump, right? We've talked before about like 72 and 84 when Nixon and Reagan won, 49 states, right? So I still think it looks really good if Bernie were to win. But if the economy tanks, or if something like the coronavirus sweeps through the country and there's a panic, some sort of breakdown, or things start to crash or collapse or not be as great as they are right now, then I would expect Bernie to have a real shot. Because if you put betrayal with panic, then truly anything can happen. By the way, Friday, we're going to have a special on the coronavirus. Quick note on this because I got to take a break, but my coronavirus concern went from 0, maybe a -1 even. I was like, this is all overblown, to now I'm at like a 2 on the worry. I'm like, we should kind of get on top of this a little bit. We should be a little. So we're going to talk to some doctors, we're going to talk to some economists, we're going to talk to some scientists, we're going to talk to a bunch of people and try to get a good, wrap our head around what's going on with coronavirus and get some real actionable steps. Like, what should we do now to protect our families? And then once if it hits the fan, then what do we do to protect our families as well? So that's coming up on Friday. True story. Mike Slater, spread the word. Hey, Cider Crusaders, saw this tweet yesterday after the debate from Caitlin Flanagan. She says, these people spent 20 minutes telling us how bad American public schools are, and they want to have all the babies in the country in state-run daycare. And because that makes sense. They do such a bang-up job, 1 through 12. Then we're saying, hey, let's make up a new thing, K, and then pre-K, and now let's have state-run daycare. So now we're going like 6 months to college is now 6 years for some, right? So 24. So we're at 6 months to 24 now. You're being educated by the government. Like this is going great. And then we'll just add on top of that state-run healthcare. But no, it'll be way better than our failed public schools, I'm sure. I want to kind of keep this party going a little bit. David Irsani wrote a great piece about why it matters that Bernie Sanders keeps praising communist dictators. So you know the Nazi Hermann Goering? He was the head of the forestry service in Germany, which is a nice little thing he did in his life. He was the head of the forestry service, which is nice. But no one ever feels the need to say, listen, the Nazis were bad, but that Goering really loved the environment. He was a great environment. No one has ever formulated that thought. But that's what Bernie keeps doing day after day. Like, what's going on here? So here's what Irsani wrote. He said, Western elites, however, like to use that kind of absurd criterion whenever they talk about socialism, ignoring its vast failures and praising its piddling and alleged successes. One of these days, we're going to talk about Denmark. And I don't even know why we hold up Denmark as some sort of paragon of, we need to be more like Denmark. People in Denmark don't even want to be more like Denmark. We'll talk about that another day. But anyway, ignoring its vast failures, praising its piddling and alleged, piddling is a great word, and alleged successes, Denmark, but not Algeria, Albania, Angola, Bangladesh, Bulgaria, Burma, Cambodia, China, Congo, East Germany, Ethiopia, Hungary, Latvia, Mongolia, Romania, Somalia, Venezuela, Vietnam, Yemen, Yugoslavia, and so on and on and on and on and on. There's a thing that people have always said, and I've said it before. I've thought this and I've said this before. This idea that socialism sounds good, but it just doesn't work in reality. Right? You've heard that argument before from conservatives, right? And again, I used to say that, it sounds good. No, it doesn't. I'm not even going to give them that much anymore. I don't even think it sounds good. We know it doesn't work, but I don't even think it sounds good. Right? What sounds good about people taking what you've earned? I don't even know what it sounds. But then you're like, oh, no, so that's not what they mean. Like, that part doesn't sound good, but the taking of things sounds good. Does it? Does that even sound good? Like, you may get like if you were to shoplift or something, you may get like a rush from stealing something. But that's just a fleeting high. In the end, it only leads to emptiness and shame and guilt, and none of those things are good. I've talked to hundreds of people on my radio show who have lived on welfare. None of them say it feels good when you live a life of welfare. None of them. At the time, they were numb to it, but they look back on it like, oh man, that welfare made me miserable. Always remember, when the government gives you something, they're also robbing you of something. When they give you something, they're also taking something. And usually, almost always, the thing they're giving you is fleeting and momentary. And what they're robbing you of is more permanent. This is the example I always go to because this is the example that we had a caller on my radio show. I'll never forget. We were talking about this like 5 or 6 years ago. And this sweet old woman called in and told me this. And like, it was perfect. I wish we still had that phone call, but it was forever ago. So we were talking about government feeding your kids breakfast at school every morning. This is one of my biggest pet peeves. Don't even get me started on it. It makes me freak out every time I think about it. But we have government feeding your kids lunch and now breakfast, and they have second breakfast in case you can't get there in time, and then they have dinner now. It's like, it's crazy, okay? Like feeding your kids. Every animal feeds their kids. Every animal in the world, every animal feeds your kids, except for human beings in 2020. Now all of a sudden it's like, whoa, like that's way too much of a responsibility. Feeding your children. You want me to feed this thing? No. You do that, government. You go. So don't even. No, you're gonna. Feeding your kids breakfast, right? The government's giving that to you. Okay, that's a fleeting, momentary satisfaction. You can be lazy and not feed your kids breakfast. You get that satisfaction, and then your kids get some food, and they're hungry again in a few hours. So that's fleeting. So the government gave you something, but what if they robbed from you and your kids in that same transaction? They've robbed the security of your kids knowing that they can count on their, parents for basic necessities. And they've robbed from you, the parent, the satisfaction and pride of providing for your children. So the government comes in and they say, hey, don't worry about this feeding your kids thing. We got this. Don't worry about it. We'll feed your kids for you. To me, that abdication of personal responsibility, it doesn't even sound good, right? So it'd be one thing if that sounded good, but then they did a bad job of feeding your kids, right? So it sounds good, but it doesn't work in practice. No, it doesn't even sound good. Like, get out of here and feed my kids. And the same thing with socialism. You've heard the clip now a million times. Bernie saying, when Fidel came into office, you know what he did? He had a massive literacy program. Is that a bad thing? Yes. Yes, it is. When the massive literacy program, again, this is assuming Cuba even does have high literacy rates today. Like, no one's even questioning if that's true today. But if you want to believe the communists, let's just go with it. We'll believe the communists, right? Yes, massive literacy programs forced upon the people through a tyrannical, oppressive government. Yes, that's a bad thing, especially when we also have high literacy rates without the trade-offs. Gosh, it's so odd. Like Bernie's been doing this whole Denmark thing, right? Like we don't want communism, we want Denmark. Okay, then why are you defending communists all the time? Like yesterday, why are you defending communists yesterday? Why are you defending communists if you want to distance yourself from communists, right? In the last debate, remember Bloomberg said, communism doesn't work and he's a communist or whatever. And Bernie's like, whoa, that's outrageous. And then in the next debate, you're like, hey, Fidel Castro did some pretty good things. Like, what are you doing? This is a clip of Bernie back in the day on Phil Donahue's show.
Are you a capitalist?
No, I'm not a capitalist.
So you don't believe in the profit motive, free enterprise? If I have a better mousetrap, I make more money.
There's something to be said for free enterprise on a local level and the competition. But what we're happening in our society is we don't live in a free enterprise society. You live in a corporate capitalist society where in virtually every single industry you have giant multi-billion-dollar corporations competing, driving the small businessman
But let's
out.
pretend it would work without all that kind of acquisition of power that is unfair and doesn't...
Do I believe that the profit motive is fundamental to human nature? The answer is no. I think the spirit of cooperation, that you and I can work together better rather than having to compete against each other and destroy each other.
Yeah. So Bernie's right, sort of. He's right that there's such thing. He uses the word corporate socialism today, whatever the term, right? But his answer to that, so it's really just cronyism. He's talking about cronyism. But the answer to that is not more government. So conservatives should be against cronyism, right? The government picking winners and losers. That's bad. And we need to stop cronyism in every way. But if that's bad, it's not that Bernie's against that. He just thinks the government's picking the wrong winners, right? Like, I'm against the government picking winners and losers. Bernie's not. He just thinks the government's picking the wrong winners. See the difference? Conservatives don't think that real conservatives don't think the government should have that much power at all. Bernie wants the government to have even more power to pick the winners and losers. And as long as he's in power, as long as he's picking the right winners. So again, that to me, that doesn't even sound good. And we know it doesn't work in practice. And of course, it's also the hypocrisy of it all, right? The hypocrisy of all the socialists and all the communists all around the world. The richest people in socialist countries are the well-connected. The richest person in Venezuela is still Hugo Chavez's daughter. The Soviet Union had separate hospitals for the well-connected, different hospitals from the rest of the people. Bernie went to go visit one of the good hospitals. We talked the other day about a man who went to a real, actual hospital. The more socialist a country is, the more income inequality is. Not to mention the more environmental degradation there is. But that's around the world. Even here, Bernie has 3 homes, and his camp is a $600,000 lake house. So don't go thinking it's like some tent on the side of the road. Someone found a video from 2017 of AOC talking about how she got her goddaughter into a charter school, even though she goes around and preaches about how much she hates and how terrible charter schools are. Story came out the other day of the head of this progressive media group, the Young Turks, right? The employees want to unionize, and the head of the Young Turks told them that they can't afford to have a union. It's going to destroy the entire company. So the Young Turks, they talk about, against the evil millionaires and billionaires, but they were given a $4 million investment by one of those evil millionaires. So we could do this all day, right? Here's in short, everyone is a conservative about what they know best. Everyone's a conservative about what they know best. Bernie's a socialist, except when it comes to my house. The Young Turks, we're so for unions. We need unions for everybody, except for my company. It's not right for my company, but for everyone else, but not right. We're against millionaires, except for when I need $1 million. Can I just have $1 million investment? AOC, she's against charter schools, except for my goddaughter. Everyone's a conservative about what they know best. Why would anyone trust these hypocrites? Coming up next, I want to share a wonderful story of a little girl born in rural West Virginia, went on to change the world. We all need to know her name. We'll do that next. True story. Mike Slater, spread the word. Hey, Saturday Crusaders, change gears here today. I've had enough politics, I've had enough talking about socialism. So I am bad at math. I'm not proud of that. I do think math is incredibly important. I think if you're good at it, you can see the world differently because math is everywhere and I'm blind to it. So I don't like that I can't do math, but because I can't do math, I'm super grateful for the people who can speak that language and can do things that are impossible for me to do and figure out on my own. This is Nate Bargatze, from his stand-up special. It's about what he would be like if he went back in time. I'm reminded of how little I know. I have a 2- and 3-year-old who ask what everything is all the time, and I don't know some of the things. Jim Gaffigan has a great joke about that when kids will say, look, Daddy, a stick. And he says, no, kids, that's an antenna. What's an antenna? It's a stick. I'm not good at math, and I don't like it, but I'm grateful for the people who are. I want to tell the story of a woman born in West Virginia, youngest of 4. Her dad was a blacksmith. Her mom was a teacher. So the culture in her home was a culture that valued education. But she was a girl. She was growing up in the 20s and the 30s. She couldn't do anything other than get married and have kids. The thing was, she was really good at math. She says when she was a kid, she would count everything. All the time, she would count steps, she'd count the dishes, she'd count the stars in the sky. The county in West Virginia that she lived in did not offer any education past 8th grade for kids like her at that time. So she had to go to a high school about 100 miles away. And her entire family actually packed up and moved with her during the school year. She was only 10 when she went to high school. She graduated at 14 and went to college at 15. Okay, so this is 1933. Now I'm reminded of the students at UVA. Remember that clip we played last week? I'm sure you've seen it. Students from POCs at UVA complaining about life on UVA's campus in 2020. All right, like, it's dangerous and I need safe spaces, blah, blah. Imagine what it was like for this woman. In 1933, at West Virginia State, I said woman, she's 15, a 15-year-old girl at West Virginia State in 1933. And today we have people like, I don't know, it's so dangerous here at UVA. One more thing I should have said. This woman is black. Black girl, college campus, 1933. You think she was worried about safe spaces? Or did she work hard and prove herself? She graduated summa cum laude, 1937, in math and French at the age of 18. And she never stopped trying to prove herself. Her mentor at college told her that, he said, "You will make a good research mathematician, and I'm going to prepare you for this career." And she said, "That's great. Where will I find a job?" And he said, "That will be your problem." Graduated, became a teacher, focused on her family, and then she got a job using those math skills. And with a pencil and a slide rule and her brain, she worked for NASA. And she calculated the exact, precise trajectories that would enable Apollo 11 to land on the moon in 1969 and then come back to Earth. Could you, I feel like Nate Bargatze, like, if they were like, "Hey, Slater, I need you to figure out the trajectory to the moon." I'd be like, where do you even start? Where do you even start that conversation? Now, there were a lot of people who were instrumental in getting to the moon, but a black woman from West Virginia, born in 1918, was one of the most instrumental. A single error from Miss Johnson, and people would die. You know, during her entire career at NASA, and for years after, right, but 33 years at NASA, almost no one knew her name. They called her the girl, if anything. But she didn't do it for fame. And I think that may be one of the most amazing parts of her story. She didn't get any fame or accolades or pats on the back at all for her entire life. She didn't get accolades, let alone respect. She didn't get the respect she deserved when she was doing this work. But she wasn't driven by external motivation. It all came from within. It all came from within. It came from above. She has this great line. She said, I don't have a feeling of inferiority. Never had. I'm as good as anybody, but no better. Love that so much. It's awesome. That's the perfect mix of confidence, right? I'm as good as anybody, and humility, but no better. I think we tend to teach our kids one of those two extremes today, right? It's we either raise our kids to have way too much confidence, like undeserved confidence. I'm the best, I'm the man, right? Or we teach our kids to have this like perverted type of humility where we teach kids to be victims and they're beaten down by the world and you have no chance, no hope, you can't do it, right? You're nothing. And I think she has that dialed in just right? The perfect amount of confidence and humility. I'm as good as anybody, but no better. And of course, she says, like people of that generation, I was just doing my job. At NASA, there were separate bathrooms, right? But the black bathrooms, the bathrooms for black people were marked, and the white bathrooms, they didn't have a sign on it. It didn't say white bathrooms, it just said bathroom. So she accidentally used the whites only bathroom, and she kept using it by accident, and no one complained until she figured out, and then she just kept using it. That was the grand integration of the bathrooms at NASA. So the story of Katherine Johnson, to me, is the story of earning respect. There's this idea today that it's a very romantic idea that you just have it. You just automatically get respect, or you should automatically have it. You're granted respect just by the mere essence of your being, right? This is from the whole self-esteem movement, taught us that you're so special, you're wonderful, and everyone needs to bow down to you because you're just the star of your movie and we're all just extras in it. She didn't grow up that way. She had to earn everything. She did. 1962, John Glenn made a final check of his planned orbital trajectory. Now, this trajectory was originally made by a computer, like a machine, not a person. And people at that time didn't really trust these newfangled machines. John Glenn didn't trust it. If you think about it, like, why would you? Right? That machine, that machine had no life. It had no soul. That machine didn't care if John Glenn lived or died. So Glenn asked the girl to double check the numbers. And he said, if she says the numbers are good, I'm ready to go. She earned that respect. Katherine Johnson, the last of NASA's hidden figures, one of the most instrumental people to help us get to the moon, passed away on Monday at the age of 101. An amazing woman, someone who needs to be a household name. This has been True Story with Mike Slater. Have a great rest of the day. We'll see you tomorrow.